Welcome to part 2 of working with Impact in Studio One. In part 2, we're going to take a close look at all of the areas to the right here, pitch, filter, and amp, that we can use to further tweak any of the samples that we have brought in and have finer control over those. Before we get started with that though, I want to talk about something that I didn't mention in part 1 that could be really helpful for some of you who like to work with samples like I do. A lot of my music involves the use of field samples, and so I'll have larger ones in these cells sometimes, and I'm working with certain parts here that I pull out to use as an aspect in my drum track. And in part 1 we talked about clicking here to zoom in, and clicking further to the left you'll go further in, and coming to the right to zoom back out, or also coming to the end of the bar and dragging. And then once we've zoomed in a bit, we can use this here. Now these can be a little bit cumbersome, and if we want to have finer control, what I wanted to mention was that we can actually just hover and use our wheel to have greater control. And then come over here and almost move by step here, a single step. And so if I want to come to the beginning of our sample and say I've brought in this other end here, and that's the other thing, we can drag, click and hold and drag, and you see the movement is pretty freely. But if I hold down shift, then I'm moving the mouse a lot, but it's a more fine adjustment. So that's available as well. And if we come in further, and say we're getting a click or a pop at the beginning of our sample and we really want to fix that, again, we can hold down shift and make a fine adjustment. We can also just hover the wheel over the zoom, come in here, and use our wheel in the scroll area. And just really come in here tight and have greater control using see, I'm just turning the wheel like one notch, and then I have such fine control of that. So if you don't work much with samples, then this is probably not useful to you at all and you're incredibly bored. But for those of you who work with samples and you've had problems with clicks and pops and things like that, you'll understand what I'm saying. And this also works for the offset. So if I hover and use the wheel, I can move one increment at a time. And for the end. Now let's go ahead and jump into working with the pitch. And the first thing I'd like to say about this area is that these controls don't do anything for the transpose and tune. So if you've been trying to adjust the attack, hold, and decay, and you're not getting anything, they only really work with this here, the envelope. So this is not active by the default position. Now if we want to transpose, then of course we can just drag to the left and it will lower. Come over to the right and we raise it. I'll control click to return that back to normal. Of course we've got fine tuning here. We all know that. And then here when we come to the envelope, this is when we make use of the attack, hold, and decay. So if I turn this dial to the left, what we're doing is lowering the pitch. But in this instance, unlike the transpose and tune, we can make use of the attack time. So we're lowering the pitch, I've got it all the way down. The attack is immediate. The attack is at 0 seconds. So as soon as I strike the pad on my controller, we're going to get that low pitch. Now by raising this up, we're increasing the attack time. And you can see by how much numerically here, 58 milliseconds. If I come all the way up here, 1.7 seconds, you see how it starts with the original frequency or the original pitch and then comes down to what we set here. And if I click and drag, you can see we get a value where we are. If I come out even further, say 2.5 seconds, then you can see how the attack is working here with our pitch. I'll lower this down to, say, about here, 691 milliseconds. Then I'll raise up the hold. This is going to, after our attack, we can set how long it's going to hold the envelope value that we've set here, that lower pitch. How long is it going to hold it? The decay is set to infinity right now, so it's really going to hold it forever. If I lower the decay though, and you can see we're now down to seconds, we're going to start to come back to that original pitch. So the attack is going to take it down to what we have the envelope set to. Now that we're lowering the decay, we should come back up to the original pitch if we adjust the hold right and get everything right here. So I'm going to put the hold at maybe 1 second and the decay at 2.4. Let's see what happens here. So you can see it comes back up slowly. If I lower this, we're going to hear it sweep back up, that pitch come back up even quicker. Okay, even quicker. So if I lower the attack, then what's that going to do? It's going to make the pitch drop even quicker. Almost even unnoticeable. It was so short. I'll put it up to 1.7. And that's almost, let me lower the hold. It's almost too, the attack is almost too long for the sample to allow the decay to raise it back up. So this is where we need to lower that attack time, say to 1.3, and we should be able to hear it sweep back up again, the pitch. Okay, so I hope you're beginning to see how these work. If I come over to the right, what we're doing is raising the pitch. So ask yourself, what is this going to do? Our attack is at 1.3, so the original pitch is going to start, and then during this 1.3 seconds, the pitch is going to start to go up. It's going to hold for, with this 831 milliseconds. And then it's going to drop back down with our decay, our quick decay. I'll make it a bit quicker to the original pitch. So let's listen to that. And the last part of the sample is kind of high anyway, so it's a little bit more difficult to discern that. I'll lower this. I think if I shorten the hold and lower the attack, it may start to become clearer at the end, and I'll raise the decay so we can hear that sweep even more at the end. Okay, there you're starting to hear it now. I'll lower the hold a touch more. Okay. And we can make that sweep at the end quicker. The lower I go, the quicker it's going to return back to that original pitch. Okay, so I hope I'm spending a lot of time with this, and it's not that exciting, but if you're someone who really wants to understand the attack, hold, decay, and envelopes and all of these things, it's really helpful to take the time to understand this. It gives you much greater control of your sounds, and you can create more original sounds, and just versus if you're trying to paint a painting with a 3-inch brush. Here, when we understand these controls, we can use a finer tipped brush to create what we really want to hear and the image that we want to really create, so to speak. Now with the velocity here, adjusting this is supposed to allow us to trigger these pads and hot pads, and however hard or soft we're triggering the pad, it's going to then control the envelope, our pitch. I've never been able to get this to work, so if any of you are watching and have an idea what I may be doing wrong, or if there's some sort of bug with this, please leave a comment. But I'm going to go ahead and control click and return everything back as it should be up top here, so that we're not affecting the next section here, which is the filter, and we'll move on to this. Now in the filter section, we have our attack, hold, and decay, which is the same up above, and it then corresponds to the envelope just the same. We have our cutoff and our resonance. Let's start with the cutoff, and this is basically going to determine the frequency that we're working with when we are utilizing this filter. And before we even get to the cutoff, it's important to note what filter type we're using, and that's down here. What we're working with currently is a low pass filter, so it's going to kind of, as we adjust the cutoff, it's going to cut off the top frequencies and allow the lower ones through, and we've got a 12 dB slope on that. We can choose from a group of them here. We have another low pass with a 24 dB slope. That's just going to be a sharper cutoff of the frequencies. We've got a band pass, which is going to let a certain range of a frequency through. So if you imagine a dam that's blocking water, and you take out a slice, and a 2-foot slice, then the water that's coming through that 2-foot slice, this is going to be the band that we're allowing through. We then have a couple of high pass filters, so this is going to kind of cut the lower ones, and when we work with the cutoff, we're then allowing those lower frequencies in or cutting them out. Another low pass here, band pass, high pass. But let's just start off with the low pass and see, since we're working with the low pass, that means we're allowing the lower ones through. So as I lower the cutoff, we should hear less of the high frequencies. That's as it is, and then as I come halfway, you can see there's barely anything there. If I come all the way, we're essentially cutting off all the frequencies. Come back up to about 75%. We can see the actual frequency that we're working with. Right now it's 2145 Hertz. I'll come back up. Now, to the right of that, we have the resonance. And this is essentially kind of like an equalizer or gain for the frequency that we're currently setting the cutoff to. So if I raise the resonance, what we're going to do is boost around this area. 3545 Hertz. So let's raise that up. Now, if I raise the cutoff up, now we're going to be boosting around 6238. And you can hear that. It's kind of harsh on the ears, actually. I'll bring it down. What about around 500? Okay, so you see how these two work together. And I won't hang around with this too much longer here, but let's just look at the high pass with a 24 dB slope. So now think of it this way, this line here, everything above this line is going to be the high frequency, everything to the left of it is going to be the low. So if we would like to introduce more of the low frequency, we want to go to the left because that's where they are, but let's hear how it sounds right now. But I'm going to take the resonance down because since we're working with that high pass filter, that could be a bit harsh. Okay, so this is the frequency that we're working with. Now let's introduce some more lower frequencies in. Take it down to 500. And let's raise that resonance up. We're boosting around this 574 Hertz area. Let's lower it a bit. Now if I lower the resonance, we're taking that boost back out of this frequency range. Put it back in. Okay, so that's how the resonance and cutoff work together. I'm going to control click and put those back to their default positions. Now let's take a look at the envelope dial here, which is going to be the same as the pitch one here. So it's going to be dependent on the type of filter we have selected here, so keep that in mind. But it's similar to the envelope above, whereas if we turn the dial to the left, we're lowering the pitch. If we turn it to the right, we're raising the pitch. If we turn to the left here, we're moving to lower frequencies, and to the right to higher frequencies. We have a low pass filter here. So as I turn to the left, we're going to move the frequencies lower. And if I play this back, we can hear how that sounds. The cutoff is all the way up. You can see we're at 16 kilohertz, so we're basically letting the whole frequency range of human hearing through. The sound is as it should be, pretty much. But as we lower this envelope, we're going to take away some of the high frequencies, and then the attack, hold, and decay is going to determine when it comes in, how long it's held, and when it's released. Attack is at 0, so instantaneously we're going to get that cut, that lowering of frequencies. And it's almost inaudible. Okay, now if I raise the attack, then this is basically saying, just as above, we're going to, for the first, say, let's try a second. For the first second, we're going to let that original frequency untouched through. Then during that second, it's going to take some of them out. And the decay is set to infinity, so it's going to cut those frequencies for the remainder of the sample. If I lower this, then we should lose some of the high frequency and then reintroduce the original frequencies back in. Let's lower that a bit. Okay, you can see it's starting to come back at the end, those higher frequencies. Now, the velocity is going to, in this instance, this does work, unlike I haven't been able to get this to work up here. However hard we strike, or however soft we strike our pad on our controller or play our key, this is going to adjust the how the frequency fluctuates throughout the sample. The last one here, the amp section, I'm going to move on to a different sample because I'm sure we're all tired of that initial one. So we've got panning, straightforward. I'll control click to return that. We've got volume control. Hope I didn't blow anyone's eardrums up with that. And then we've got a velocity control, and this basically all the way to the right is going to allow the full amplitude range for the sample to come through. And then as we move to the left, it's going to kind of limit the amount of amplitude that we can take advantage of on our controller. It's going to basically all the way to the left, it's going to trigger 127 full velocity no matter how hard or soft we strike the pad. So I'm going to press this pretty soft. Whoops. So I'm just striking really soft. Now I'm going to tap hard. Now soft. There is no adjustment. So that's what that's for. And then as I move to the center, we start to get more. All the way. Okay. Now the attack, hold, and decay here are going to basically control the amplitude for the sound as the sample plays back. So the attack is set to 0 right now. It's going to come at full amplitude when I trigger the pad. The further back I move, we're going to cut off that transient. And since it's such a short sample, we basically lose it. If I take the whole down, then we're going to start to, and actually we're not going to do anything because, well, the decay is at 5 milliseconds. If I cut that, we should lose our sample here, yeah. Okay, so at this point, we should, kind of see how these are working. And if you've made it through, good on you. Understanding how how envelopes work and can control sound will allow you to really make more creative and have more creative control of your sounds and create more original material. So again, thanks for watching. Take care.